I haven't done a video free form in a while, just looking at the camera and talking to you without a huge amount of notes. I have some notes here. Today, I want to talk to you about my 10 favorite cuts of red meat that are not ribeyes. I'm going to tell you why, a little bit about each one, why they're my favorites. And I've said it before here, and I'll say it again. Carnivore influencers love them some ribeyes, almost to the point of making some people believe that carnivore diet is a ribeye religion, or that you should only eat ribeyes on a carnivore diet. And that's not true at all. And in fact, there are cuts of red meat out there that are just as tasty as a ribeye, have a similar fatty acid profile, or, and I'm weird among carnivores when I say this, but there is a place even for very lean cuts of red meat. But, the easiest thing in the world to do is to add animal fat to what you're eating. So we're going to go over some of my favorite cuts of red meat. There are actually 10 of them that I'm going to talk to you about today. And partially because it is expected, of course, that ribeyes are going to go back up in price in the fall simply because the summer grilling season is over, and a lot of the extra animal processing that's going on in the cattle industry due to cost of feed and droughts and all that stuff, well, that's going to come to an end soon too, which means the supply is going to tighten up. So let's talk about some alternatives that I personally love. And I want you in the comments to tell me some cuts of steak that are not the typical T-bone, ribeye, strip steak that you absolutely love yourself, whether it's beef or other things, because I'm not limiting this to beef. So let's talk about those good alternatives to ribeyes that may or may not be super cheap, but are absolutely delicious and worth looking at. And the first is the brisket. Now, we're going reverse order here. And I put brisket at the bottom of my top 10 because I love brisket. Done the typical Texas way of salt and pepper, or I've even done it with just salt when I was eliminating all spices. I don't eat a lot of pepper, but if I do, it's typically on brisket. But brisket is wonderful because it's fatty. Now, it requires slow cooking of some way. Like I've seen some people in the comments they're talking about cutting brisket into steaks and pan frying them, and it turns out fine for them. I don't know how you do that. It is super tough as a cut. So slow cook it, put it in your oven, cook it at like 225 or so for 10 hours, and you can slice it super thin. I have a pellet grill. I smoke the brisket, classic Texas way. Other people put them in crock pots. There's a lot of different ways you can slow cook a brisket. They're cheap, they're very fatty, and they're delicious. Sometimes you can find briskets for $2.99 a pound. Granted, you're getting a 14-pound brisket when you're doing that, so it's still going to cost you some money. But when you cook the whole thing up, guess what happens? You've got meat for days. Briskets are wonderful. My next favorite are lamb chops. I love lamb chops. They're so good. Lamb is among American carnivores, especially. You don't see lamb getting enough love. Lamb is ruminant. Got a multi-chambered stomach. It's a red meat, like deeply nutritious, loaded with all the similar nutrients that beef has. But a lot of people don't buy it, and I don't know why. Lamb chops are those really small looking things. You can buy a 3-4 pound pack of lamb chops for not a bad price, honestly, at Sam's Club. Portion it out to 1 pound portions, pan fry them, eat them rare, medium rare, however you like. They're absolutely delicious. I highly recommend you look into lamb chops. There are videos online for how to cook lamb properly. A pro tip on buying lamb is see if you can buy it from, I recommend Sam's Club, mostly for if you're trying to save money. But if that's not as much of a concern for you, buy it from a local rancher or from a company online like Billy Doe Meats. They don't age their meat, in which the reason, at least that's my understanding, is they do not age their meat. And that will help if you've got histamine responses to meat, but also the most basic level, a lot of people don't like lamb because of the strong lamb flavor. Well, that strong lamb flavor comes from the aging process. I've cooked their lamb before that isn't aged, it tastes like beef to me. I can smell the lamb scent, that flavor. I can kind of smell it a little bit when I'm cooking it, but then it just tastes like beef. It's wonderful stuff. The next is the Denver steak. It's one of the most unusual cuts of steak out there. You're gonna have to go to a butcher for it. I'd explain what a Denver steak is, but it's just an unusual, just great cut of steak that you're not going to find at Walmart. You're not going to find it probably at Safeway, unless you live like in a meatopia or something, where you go to the grocery store and every conceivable cut of steak is out there. If you're interested in a Denver steak, look it up. Use it as an opportunity to visit your local butcher and ask if they have it, because that's usually where people buy them, are those specialty cuts of steak, and the Denver steak, the Kansas City steak, these other things. You can find those typically at a local butcher, and they're people you should be getting to know anyway, just in case all the rumors of cattle, beef shortages in the coming year are turn out to be true. You want to know where you can find it that other people aren't going, and most people don't go to the butcher. So look up your butcher. The next one is beef bacon. I don't know if you've ever had beef bacon, but it's made from the belly of the cow, and it's cured exactly like you would pork bacon. Now the thing is, I have never seen sugar-free beef bacon. Never seen it before, so it'll have trace sugars in it probably. Unless you make your own, you know where to get beef belly from, let me know in the comments. I have never seen it anywhere. I haven't checked with my local butcher. I'll ask him, but my local butcher sells USDA select grade beef. I have it in good authority, and I'd rather buy my beef from a local rancher, and they don't sell beef belly. They do occasionally have bacon themselves, so. But beef bacon is great. It's fatty, it's rich, it's wonderful. It tastes different though than regular pork bacon. So don't expect it to taste the same. Don't expect it to crisp the same way. It's a different experience, but it's wonderful. And sticking to beef here, the next one is beef cheek. Now, beef cheek is tricky to cook. It's like chuck roast, except much smaller because it's the cheek of the animal, like the face cheek from their face. And when you buy it, you find these at like Latino stores typically, or a lot of Asian markets. They're going to have a lot of connective tissue, but you can, there are videos online where you can see how to process the beef cheek properly, where you can take all the extra stuff off, and you'll get, the package will start out pretty big, it comes out pretty small. Beef cheek is cheap because not a lot of demand for it, but it can be smoked like a brisket. So put it in your pellet grill or your offset smoker or whatnot, and you cook it to an internal temperature of like 200 degrees. It's wonderful. And it's another one of those you have to cook low and slow because they're loaded with collagen and have connective tissues. Once you break them down, it becomes like a decadent cut of meat. A little bit of work though for that one, but it's cheap. The next one is beef plate ribs. These are your dinosaur ribs, right? Your dino ribs that you see, on TV or whatever. The really huge ribs coming out of the big thick cut of rib. They are often called brisket on a stick for a reason, and they're a classic of Texas barbecue. Again, low and slow, a lot of connective tissue, a lot of collagen in there, low and slow, whether it's in your oven or in a grill, however you do it, it's low and slow. But they're wonderful. Absolutely love beef plate ribs, and I'm debating whether I'm going to replace the pork ribs I do every year at Thanksgiving, in addition to the turkey, with beef plate ribs. Something I'm debating because they aren't exactly the cheapest thing in the world. There's a lot of demand for them and not a lot of supply. Turning back to lamb, my next favorite is lamb bacon. Billy Doe Meats sells lamb bacon, and it's magnificent stuff. It's tender. It comes diced up, so it's not like strips. Full of flavor, full of salt. I mean, wonderful, wonderful stuff. They also have a goat bacon, by the way. Honorable mention to the goat bacon. Goat bacon is good too. Goat is also ruminant and super cheap if you can find it. Billy Doe Meats sells it. They did not pay me to tell you this stuff. I've just bought stuff from them before. But they have, lamb and goat, wonderful, wonderful cuts. Different if you're not used to eating those things. If you want to shop locally, check out a Latino grocery store. They will often have goat meat. Sticking with goat, we get leg of lamb. Leg of lamb is wonderful stuff. This is a holiday roast often. Sam's Club will sell it to you without the bone in it. I think Walmart has it with the bone. You can find them at some other grocery stores. I've done this again in my grill. I grilled it to a nice 120 something degree internal temperature, so it was nice and rare-ish. Sliced it. Wonderful stuff. Lamb does not get enough love in the carnivore world, and we really need to bring lamb back, just if for no other reason than variety. My last two, I could eat every single day for the rest of my life and be perfectly happy. And the first is the tri-tip. Outside of California, the tri-tip isn't well known for whatever reason. It comes from the sirloin, often has a little bit of fat cap on it, though when you buy it at the grocery store, whether it's Costco or any store that you're lucky enough to sell you tri-tip, they peel all the fat off. It's got a fair amount of intramuscular fat, but it's still a lean cut. I bought a tri-tip from a grocery store the other day. because I just really had a hankering for one. Didn't want to wait till my local rancher showed up at his usual place every week and had no fat cap on it. But their packaging claimed it had 11 grams of fat per 4 ounce serving to 22 or 23 grams of protein. Not a bad ratio if you're doing a leaner thing like I am, and I'll explain why I'm doing some leaner things to close this out. But I could eat this every day for the rest of my life. I cook the thing to around 120, 125 degrees. There's certain ways you got to cut a tri-tip. You'll want to look that up online if you decide to go there. But it is wonderful and super tender. Seriously, super tender. And the last one is my favorite one right now, and that is the Pecania, sometimes called the sirloin cap or the rump cap. It's as tender as a sirloin steak with a thick fat cap on top. It's decadent. There's a reason Brazilian steakhouses are known for the Pecania. And it's like why people go there for that particular cut of meat, even if at the Brazilian steakhouse, they don't exactly give you a whole lot every time they come by. It is wonderful. I can get it from my local rancher. I can get it from Wild Fork Foods. I hear that in Texas you can get it at Walmart. Not telling you to shop at Walmart, but I totally understand if you can't afford the local meat. But Pecania is one of those things that I could eat every day for the rest of my life and be happy. And it's got a similar fatty acid profile as ribeye. And when ribeye goes back to its normal price, Pecania is typically a lot less price per pound, and you can get them in 3 and 4 pound sizes, so you have meat for days. Some meats I've been looking at lately that I haven't had in years, but I kind of want to try again because I'm doing a lean experiment personally, is a thing like the London broil. A lot of people make jerky out of London broil. I don't know why. It's lean. You have to cook it right. Apparently, I'll try it in my pellet grill to see if how it tastes when coming out medium rare. That's one that I want to try again. I'm going to be doing probably a lot of sirloin steaks in the coming days, and the reason is I had a recent injury at the gym, and it wasn't even an injury at the gym. It was I'm getting older, and now old gym injuries flare up as soon as the weather and the barometric pressure shifts dramatically, which is exactly what happened to me about a month ago. I could barely walk, and then my shoulder started hurting, and it was the shoulder that kept me out of the gym, not really the calf thing. And I don't know what that was all about, but it took me 3 weeks for my shoulder to get back to the point where I can go back to the gym and do things like bench press and shoulder presses and all the weight training I love to do. And in the days before I went back, I started because when I could tell that I was about ready to go back, I started taking creatine monohydrate again because it helps with gym performance, mental clarity, metabolism. There's metabolic things, and the side effect of it is water retention. Which, if you do low carb stuff, water retention is not a bad thing necessarily, because it's well known in the carb reduction world that you're going to retain water, or you're going to not retain water rather, and you're going to pee out all your electrolytes. A little water retention helps with that. So it's probably why I put on like a few pounds this past week. But the weight loss, stopped right when I hit 150 pounds lost. Yes, I've lost 150 pounds. That's a topic for a separate video, how I did it. And it is an unorthodox way of doing the carnivore diet because I personally don't believe in eating till you're comfortably stuffed. But that's a topic for another video. And let me know, what are your favorite cuts of beef that are not the ribeye? There are other things out there to eat. Let me know what your favorite ones are, whether they're beef or lamb or, good quality pork, whatever you like. Let me know in the comments, please. And like and subscribe if you haven't. It really does help. And thanks for watching today.